Almost there. Chapter 13, Naveen. Excitement surged through Naveen's veins, his euphoria building with every song the crayfish crooners played. His obsession with jazz music was one of the things that had first drawn him to New Orleans, but never had he imagined he would get the chance to play with a live band. He felt like a real musician, not just someone with a hobby. He could get used to this. Naveen peered out in the crowd from his perch on the raised dais and hoped to spot Tiana. He had noticed her sticking her head out of the kitchen door a few minutes ago, but it appeared she had not followed Charlotte out to the dining room. Disappointment and exasperation warred within him, as he recalled the abject horror that raced across her face when he'd offered to step in for an injured trumpet player. It wasn't as if he suggested he take over cooking duties in her kitchen. That would be a disaster. But he knew his way around a trumpet, and he'd practiced enough of the American jazz standards to blend right in with the crayfish crooners. Naveen had hoped Tiana would be grateful that he'd offered to help, or at the very least that she would be relieved the band would be able to play through the second dinner rush, though they were down 2 members. Alas, it would appear that no smiles of appreciation were anywhere in his future, not from Tiana. If only he could understand why she hated him so. Well, that was not fair. He did not know if Tiana hated him. He didn't know how she felt about him at all. Every time he came near her, she scurried away like a frightened little church mouse. Her behavior was peculiar and frustrating and confusing. At first he thought Tiana was just shy. He would visit the diner where she had worked as a waitress just to see her. Of course, he would not let her know that was why he frequented it, but so he'd ordered beignets. He ate so many of those luscious fried donuts during his first few months in New Orleans that his pants started to get tight at the waist. Once he and Charlotte became friends, his encounters with Tiana had become more frequent. Tiana waited impatiently for her to warm up to him, but when she remained skittish, he figured that was just her nature. Then after she opened a restaurant, he observed how vibrant she was with all her other guests. That was when Naveen realized that Tiana's timidly seemed to be reserved only for him. She constantly turned away from him, almost in a rebuff. He couldn't understand it. Had he done something to her? He tried to tell himself that it didn't matter, but that would be a lie. He spent much of his spare time playing jazz music or learning more about the sugar industry, but when he was not doing either of those, he was trying to solve the mystery of the beautiful Tiana. Louis held up his hands, indicating that this would be their final song of the night, which meant his experience as a real musician was coming to a close. Naveen managed to clear his mind. He wanted to soak in the last drops of this remarkable feeling. The song ended, and the crowd erupted in applause. It was exhilarating, seeing the joy in everyone's faces, knowing he'd entertained them with his music. It sent a rush of pride and gratitude galloping through his bloodstream. If only Tiana had been out in the dining room to see it. "Hey man, you should be on top of the world after that performance," Louis said. "Why are you looking so down and out?" Naveen glanced over to find Louis smiling at him, his toothy grin a mile wide. He had been so caught up in his thoughts of Tiana that Naveen hadn't realized he was frowning. "I'm not," Naveen assured him. "This was great. I was just thinking." "Well, maybe you should stop thinking about whatever it is that put that frown on your face," Louis said as he slapped a broad palm on Naveen's shoulder. "Not if it makes you this sad." That was the problem. He couldn't stop thinking about Tiana. "I'm not sad," Naveen said. He covered Louis's hand. "Thanks for letting me play with the guys, eh? This was like, what do they say, like a dream come true?" "Aw, man, any time," Louis said. "In fact, you should think about joining the band. We can always use a new guy on the trumpet." "It would be like old times," Naveen said automatically. Louis's eyes widened. "What did you say?" Like old times?" Naveen said. He frowned. "Wait, have we done this before? Played music together, I mean?" I don't think so," Louis said. "I could have sworn." Naveen shook his head, wondering what had gotten into him. "Anyway, thank you for the invitation, but things are getting pretty busy down at the sugar mill." He clapped Louis on the shoulder. "This was fun, my friend." Naveen had started to think of Louis as a friend in the year since he'd arrived in the shores of America. Despite his extremely big teeth and the skin condition that required him to constantly rub lanolin along his skin, Louis was approachable and always had a ready smile. Naveen was grateful for him. He was grateful for all the friends he'd made since moving to New Orleans. More and more, Naveen was coming to realize that traveling to this country was the best decision he'd ever made. He was meeting new people and working hard. If one could call persuading restaurants and stores to partner with LaBeouf, Sugar's hard work. For a guy like him, it came naturally. But what else could he do with his life? Naveen considered Louis's invitation to join in with the Crawfish Crooners. If he could spend the rest of his life playing jazz music with his friends, he would die a happy man. Well, not completely happy. Convincing Tiana that she did not have to run away whenever he was near would be nice. She and Louis were good friends. Maybe he could ask Louis to put on a good word for him. Naveen's back went ramrod straight. Akanza! Why hadn't he thought of this before? He swiftly climbed down from the stage and went in search of Tiana's other friend, her best friend, Charlotte. He spotted her sitting at the table Mr. LaBeouf always occupied when he dined at the supper club, toward the rear of the dining room. Given the look on Charlotte's face, the fellow sitting next to her was the one she'd hoped to avoid. Maybe if he rescued her from this conversation she obviously did not want to be a part of, she would return the favor. "Hello, gentlemen," Naveen greeted the table at a large. "Mr. LaBeouf, I wonder if I could speak to Charlotte for—" "Oh, yes," Charlotte yelled. She pushed back from the table so quickly that her chair landed on the floor behind her. "I don't mean to be rude, but now that Naveen is done filling in for that trumpet player with the busted lip, we can go back to our date." She gripped his arm like a vise and pinched him. "Yes," Naveen yelped. "Let us continue our date." "Oh, thank goodness." Charlotte released a relieved sigh as they quickly made her way back toward the table near the stage. "I swear if I have to listen to Robin Dubois talk about his bunions a second longer, I may have murdered him. Heavens to Betsy, that man is irritating." Naveen's forehead wrinkled. Who is Betsy?" "I don't know. It's just something people say around here." She waved him off. "Now, what is it that you wanted? Or did you come over because you could see on my face that I was ready to commit a felony?" Both, actually," Naveen said. He pulled out the chair at their table and waited until he sat before taking a seat himself. He scooted his chair closer to her and, in a lowered voice, said, "I need you to put in a good word for me with Tiana." Charlotte's head jerked back. The suspicion in her eyes caused Naveen to squirm like a bug under a microscope. But then a cagey smile drew across her lips. "I knew you had the designs on Tia," Charlotte mused as she pointed a finger at him. "I could sense something happening between you two. She held up her hands. "But before you get your hopes up, I can already tell exactly what Tiana will say. She'll say that she's too busy and doesn't have time for a romantic foolishness. But, now usually I would disagree with that sentiment because I believe there's nothing more important than love. However, I've known Tia a long time, and I know how hard she's worked for this restaurant. I don't want anything to distract her either." "I don't want to be a distraction, Of course, that girl really does need to loosen up a bit." "I just want to get to know her better," Naveen rushed out before she could interrupt him again. "That is all, Charlotte." He hunched his shoulders. "I'm not sure why, but Tiana does not seem to like me very much. Maybe if we could tell her that I'm not such a bad guy, she won't run away when she sees me, eh?" Charlotte tipped her head to the side. After several moments ticked by, she pointed at Naveen and said, "Okay, here's what I'll do. I'll tell Tia that you're madly in love with her." No, Naveen said. Charlotte slapped him on the arm. "I'm only teasing, Naveen, lighten up. I know what I'm doing here," she said. "I will casually mention how interesting you are." She slapped her fingers. "Quick, give me something interesting about you." I've been learning to juggle?" "I'll make something up. Besides, I'm hoping to drag her to some Mardi Gras balls and she'll need a date." She narrowed her eyes at Naveen once more. "But you better not make me regret it. Tiana is my best friend and I will not see her hurt." Naveen shook his head. "No way. I would never hurt her." His pulse quickened as the thought of accompanying Tiana to a ball, seeing her all dolled up in a beautiful gown. He could see her now. Actually, he could see it. Naveen squinted in confusion. Had he seen her in a ball gown already? "Of course, we'll have to work our way up to the Mardi Gras ball. I think we need to start slow, like asking her out for a coffee tomorrow." Charlotte's eyes brightened as he looked over Naveen's shoulder. "Here's your chance." Naveen whipped around. Tiana had just stepped out of the kitchen. She carried a tray laden with dishes on her shoulder, probably beignets or bread pudding. Both were hot-ticket items when it came to desserts at T&J's supper club. "You ready, sugar?" Charlotte asked. He stopped and took a breath. Before he could nod, Charlotte grabbed him by the hand and jerked him from his seat. Come on, Operation Make a Match with My Two Best Friends is on.